From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, go leave a review. Tell other people about the podcast. This is how we continue to grow. And we love doing this with you guys and for you guys. So we always appreciate a review. We always appreciate the feedback. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Having a great week. I gotta say, it's only the second week of this new nickname, and I'm just loving it. I gotta reach out to some corny daytime TV shows and see what we can do with this brand.
I was gonna say, I think what's the famous judge there? What's her name?
Judge Judy.
Yeah, didn't she retire? Like, isn't there
Is there an opening? There's a hole in the market. One brother steps on the other brother's PlayStation. Who's going to pay for that?
I was going to say, like, we could do a gaming version of Judge Judy, right? Small claims, basically.
Yeah. I think we should take this conversation offline and bake it a little further.
I'm curious, has anyone reached out to you to tell you they love the nickname? Because I've had a few people tell me that they thought this was perfect.
I wish more people would reach out, honestly. Please, at Jimbo Danks on all socials. Would love to hear it. We'll even give you guys some shout outs, or I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll do some honorable merch. We'll see.
That's actually a good idea. That's actually not a bad idea, but you need some some cheesy catchphrase. That's the key.
Yeah, the Juice has that cornered pretty well, so I got to ask him maybe for some advice there.
I was gonna say also this week, did you get to play Halo campaign? I know this Halo conversation is a little bit of a topic we've been coming back to. Did you get to play it? Because I'm curious.
I haven't really played any video games, unfortunately, in like 2 weeks or so. With Halo in particular, my squad and I decided, actually, and this is the ultimate of commitments, of loyalty, of whatever you want to call it, but we said we're going to wait until next month until the co-op is released, and then we'll do it together. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That part I don't fully understand. Why release the campaign without that feature? Is it this trend of is it the cyberpunk trend, right? Releasing unfinished games, releasing half-baked games. Is this like Halo early access, but without calling it that? Is that, in your mind, are they guilty of this too?
I have tremendous respect and appreciation for the development process, especially after reading, and we've talked about it before, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, where you kind of have these one-on-one interviews with some amazing studios, and you learn a lot about the hardships that they face, and more importantly, about kind of what happened. This is obviously a lot of those interviews back when physical discs were being shipped, and you kind of have all those learnings where it's like, oh crap, we've already printed 60,000 copies, and now we're learning that there's still bugs here. But yeah, I think it's always a battle between resources and time, and it doesn't seem to be ruining the hype, so that's the cool thing, but it is frustrating nonetheless. And I think we just have increasingly high standards also as a gaming community, as these great games come out, as we're constantly floored by innovation and advancement. So trying to be patient with it, but the fanboy is like, yeah, dude, what the heck?
I mean, innovation and advancement. I like that, Jimmy, as a segue, because we have such a great guest on the podcast this week, doing, I think, some very, very cool things innovative things in the game space. And that guest today is none other than Kevin Caldwell. Kevin is the CEO and founder of Evolved Play. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Kevin, for our audience, our listeners who maybe don't know much about you or don't know much about Evolved Play or have not maybe heard about it, would love a bit of your background, how you got into gaming, what you're focused on now, just a bit of the Kevin and Evolved story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like many people in the games industry, I got my start when I was a kid, playing as many games as I could get my hands on. Had an early Atari, my dad had, and that was sort of the pathway down into now being sort of startup founder of Evolved Play. So worked at Blizzard at the start of my career. That was on the cusp of a sort of industrial design degree during the '07 recession. Kind of went into the job market with not a lot of prospects, and then ended up having a friend that worked at Blizzard, and got my start on the night crew testing World of Warcraft Burning Crusade patch 2.4, which was the Brewfest patch, if you were wondering. And had a background in athletics as well. I played 3 sports growing up: baseball, football, and hockey. And I think the design thinking and the design background I got from my education, even though I didn't get a job in design at the time, was really foundational in my being able to come into an environment like Blizzard and have a lot of value in developing quality. We were just talking about Halo and Cyberpunk and some of these other games. That's many of the things that you mentioned, Jimmy, are really sort of critical to releasing product on time and sort of to expectations of the customer. But ended up spending about a decade in quality assurance for a handful of other AAA studios, and then found my way into edtech with a company called Age of Learning, working on the sort of internationally renowned ABC Mouse, which is a edtech platform, gamified edtech platform for kids 2 through 8. And really, came into focus with, what kind of impact, we could make with digital experiences, with some entertainment value in there. And the impact on kids and sort of learning was unquestionable. But wasn't quite ready to jump into Evolved Play at the time, and spent a couple years in mobile development and publishing with a group called MobilityWare before finding myself at Riot Games, where I was the development lead for the LCS for about 2.5 years. And then, so jumped into Evolved Play, with the birth of my daughter in November 2019. And then also the pandemic sort of graced us. And that seemed, like the right time to jump into what we're calling a family gaming platform and unique game world that aims to support parents as opposed to just kids, but parents and their children in their social, emotional, and cognitive growth. So we're looking to combine the adventure, exploration, and fun of Zelda with the developmental properties of something similar to the Elevate app to help families grow and foster healthy parent-child relationships, which are really critical for healthy brain architecture and development, especially through those early childhood years.
Kevin, look, I love, obviously there's a ton to unpack there. The WoW fanboy in me wants to talk about your time at Blizzard.
I knew it.
So let me get that out of my system first, because then we're going to get into the edtech stuff. But let me get it out of my system. How do you feel about current day Activision Blizzard from a game innovation perspective? Because I would argue what you're doing at Evolved Play is at the cutting edge of game innovation. Okay.
Yeah.
Is Activision Blizzard making games anymore for real here? If you don't want to answer, it's okay.
I still have a lot of colleagues at Blizzard, and I think it's tough, right? I don't think anybody that knows me. I think that anybody that knows me knows that I don't love remasters or I forget what the other word is that we use to describe sort of remakes. But I'm a bit disappointed with the Blizzard portfolio. I think I haven't played Diablo 4. I haven't seen it. I don't even know if it's out yet. But I would love to see some innovative products coming out of Blizzard, and I think there's so many people there that have the potential to do something truly innovative. And I think it's one of the challenges of running a game business, right? Is you don't always give people the time to innovate when you need to make that next dollar. I don't exactly know if that's what's happening at Blizzard, but I have my suspicions. but yeah, it's kind of disappointing to have grown up in that environment. From a game industry perspective, having cut my teeth on so many bugs in both WoW and StarCraft, and then to see the blood, sweat, and tears go into the quality of those games, the craftsmanship of those games, the story, the narrative, and really the impact of what those games intended to do. And then to see some of the lineup over the last couple of years has been a bit. I don't know. There's a place in my heart that is just a little bit disappointed.
There's
So
a place
I
in
want to
your
talk.
heart that would like to see a WoW too, right? Like, can we admit that we need a new MMO here from
Well,
Activision Blizzard?
I worked on that one too, not WoW 2, but I worked on Project Titan for a handful of years, and saw what could have been, but ultimately became Overwatch, which was a fantastic product, but is nowhere near what I think is possible with with Blizzard, that kind of talent at Blizzard, and what has been an absence in the MMO industry, right? Is that next big MMO that's going to surpass and take the title of WoW.
So
Well,
I
it's
want to touch on this a little bit, Paul, actually,
yeah.
and hopefully, Kevin, I won't get you in too much trouble. Let's try and avoid criticism. But we don't have a lot of guests, I don't think, that have such diverse experience from working with Blizzard, EA, Riot, et cetera. And so, what trending themes or consistencies, I think, do you notice across these companies? What strengths? Let's only talk about the good here. I don't want to hear anything ugly or anything about negative corporate culture, but rather from a positive perspective. What are the things at each of these that you really value the most, or things that you noticed that all three of them kind of shared as part of that secret sauce to success?
Oh wow, that's a deep question. Let's see. I think whenever you have really passionate people and talent, kind of sharing a space and working towards really big meaty problems, you have the potential for greatness to come out of there. And I think when you have leaders and you have sort of business acumen inside of that's able to foster and corral that talent to deliver on real value for consumers, you end up having the sort of success that these companies have. And when you can institutionalize that kind of culture, and when you can sort of repeat it and you can sort of extend it to each new project that you spin up, you really have something that can last a while. And I think that's one of the challenges that these companies all face is how to repeat success, how to iterate on success, and keep it moving forward in the positive direction that you want to see it. Yeah, so I could go. Trying not to get into the critical side of it, but yeah, I think that's ultimately what it boils down to.
Sorry, Jimmy, did you have a follow up there?
Just one quick follow up, and that was,
Yeah.
as an employee, I suppose, you worked on all these projects, and I don't want you to, again, let's sticking to the positive. What do you think was your favorite time or your favorite project that you worked on for any of them, and for some of the reasons that you just shared in terms of applying all of that manpower to unpacking those difficult problems?
Yeah, Project Titan was certainly, I don't want to say it was a pinnacle of my career, but it certainly was in terms of being surrounded by arguably the most talented, game development team on the planet for the time that group was assembled. It was the sort of who's who and of game developers, and I think working at Riot on the LCS on the esports side was also very similar in that regard. You had a group of incredibly passionate people. That was one of the first things that I recognized about everybody in esports at Riot was just the depth of passion. They lived, breathed, and sort of swam in everything esports all day, every day. And that's just like it's magic to be around that kind of passion. All funneling towards goals. And I think oftentimes that can be a challenge for companies trying to figure out how to kind of aim that passion and what kind of problems to solve and what kind of scope and constraints you need to put on those teams, because they can just go wild, right? I think in the case of Project Titan, that was a bit of what happened. You just had so many people operating on so many different wavelengths that ultimately couldn't land it, right? But on in the case of Riot, they had a well-oiled machine, and sort of it was like, how do we innovate constantly, over ourselves, right? They can just kind of look at the last quarter and be like, oh, we know what we did last quarter. Let's figure out what to do this quarter. Yeah.
Riot always feels unstoppable these days. Shout out to Matt who introduced us.
Yeah. Hey, Matt.
who who also hates every time I talk about MMOs on this podcast. Because I hear Riot is planning one of their own. This is the rumor. So I guess
I'm on the spectator side of that myself.
well, all of us. But this is why for Matt and for Matt's benefit, we'll keep the WoW 2 talk and the New World and all this stuff talk to a minimum. Kevin, I'd love to talk a bit about evolved play. The sort of piece of the market that you're going after, I find fascinating. I want to talk about the opportunity there and the risks there, but could you, like, in a nutshell, kind of talk about what makes the platform you're building different from like a Roblox or a Minecraft or other platforms that are sort of, at least the stereotype is targeted at a younger market? Like, what are you guys doing different? You mentioned involving the parents. Like, I would love sort of you walking us through that.
Yeah. It's a really interesting space, right? We're talking about kids. Our early focus is our objective audience is 5 to 10-year-olds and their parents, right? Which is a very formative time for kids and for parents. I think having a 2-year-old myself, and having grown up as a gamer, there's a real opportunity that often gets missed with a lot of the game products that get developed for kids, which is how do you involve the parent in that experience, right? And I think one of the challenges that games have is often figuring out, like, how do you monetize that, right? How do you think about developing a consumer product for a 5 to 10-year-old when the consumer is really the parent? And I think for us, recognizing what's happening in the market, certainly Roblox having a sort of dominant place in that, not necessarily the 9 and under. I think they've now transitioned to be more 12 plus, but in that space, like, kids' interests are changing, they're growing, they're evolving, they're maturing every week, and I think that is one of the biggest challenges of operating in that space is how do you get that investment, and that sort of motivation to encourage the parent, to encourage the child to keep playing, to participating, and for us, that's why we really are starting to try to focus on what does that parent value proposition look like? Why do they want their kid to play this game, and why do they want to keep encouraging their kids to play that game? And that even might sound a little far-fetched for some, which is a parent encouraging their kid to play a game, and I think that's the kind of product that we want to develop, is something that the parents can recognize and feel the tangible value, understand the benefit of sort of a collaborative multiplayer social environment for their kids to be connecting with other kids, and sort of also giving that parent the opportunity to play with the kid. And that's for us, like, that's what we really want to be able to foster, is that parent-child interaction, because it does support positive relationships. Whenever a parent takes an interest in a kid's hobby, whenever they sort of engage along the spectrum of play, whether or not it's co-opting that play or guiding that play, or just giving the kid the time to free play, that's all really important for kids' development. And I think for maybe, I don't want to call it traditional game making, but for traditional game making, a lot of it is like, what do I want to play, right? And as an adult, we often have a really hard time thinking about those developmental aspects and those developmental concerns of 5 to 10-year-olds, or of kids younger than perhaps 12, that we want to play our games. And then I think that's really what we've seen in the industry. Is a problem, where you have kids as early as 6 playing Call of Duty. You have them playing Overwatch. You have them playing all these games that are made for adults, that are sort of engineered to get that dopamine hit, and that next sort of sort of engagement opportunity to retain people for longer periods of time. And for kids, we have to be really sensitive to how we're engaging them, how we're incentivizing them. And so for us, starting from a foundation of a sort of a pedagogical scaffolding, we're looking at the developmental psychology, we're looking at the education, benefits, and really how to bring all these things to get all these different components and aspects together and funnel it into what is otherwise would look like a game. And I think That's a lot of work. It's taken us a long time to get to the point that we're at today. And there's not a lot of appetite for that in the sort of consumer game market when you sort of look more broadly, right? People want to see that 18 to 35-year-old core gaming product, and they want to know that it can return $1 billion. And anything sort of outside of that is a really difficult sell. But we see the trends in gaming over the last decade plus, and certainly the adoption rates of Gen Z of gaming and sort of game culture, far surpassing what we saw with sort of MTV in the 90s, and sort of that culture. And we just think what's happening in the future with games and where everything's going with the metaverse, depending on which definition you align with. There's going to be an opportunity for this. There's going to be those parents, and I'm one of them, that want to engage more frequently with their kids. They want to be able to see what their kids are doing and kind of understand the narratives and the gameplay that they're being exposed to, and understand how to foster that. Right. I think it's called concerted cultivation, sort of a parenting style.
But Kevin, like, how is the parent involved? Is this like co-op play on steroids? Is this, like an observer mode for the parents? Is it?
Yes, I think every one of those is an opportunity that we're looking to engage in, because the lifestyle of a parent varies, right? In the morning, you might have some free time, like hey, let's play a quick 20-minute session and go get that next adventure done. Or it might be, hey, I'm in the middle of a meeting or a podcast, and I notice that my child's starting to play with their friends. I'm going to go power up that experience and give them something additional to sink their teeth into. Or hey, I don't have time to be sort of actively engaged. I'm just going to cheer them on and send them sort of the sort of Clash Royale confetti, so to speak. And I think that's for us not something that we see broadly in the game space. Is any companies really paying attention to the parents? It's just like, hey, we want to get these kids in. A lot of game companies assume that the parents are busy off doing other things, and we're like, I want to be playing that. Let's jump in. Let's see how we can kind of level that up and take it a bit further, and really provide parents that opportunity to engage. And we think the extended family is also important, as we're all getting older and our kids are having kids. Like the grandparents are wanting the games. I'm sure you've seen and heard, and maybe even talked to some of the sort of older esports teams. Right, you're seeing a lot of sort of older aged people really getting involved, or sort of continuing their passions into their their late 50s and 60s and beyond. We just think the dynamics are changing around game worlds and what that looks like.
And what's the business model for you guys? Like, is the idea that you're going to open this up and people will be able to develop experiences, adventures of their own on the platform, like a la Roblox? Or is the idea to put a sort of a boxed game out there with a with a set of adventures and experiences, or whatever, however you're describing it, sort of, and sort of more traditional game development?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good question. We look at the age of the children and kind of our aspirations beyond that early childhood age to really sort of inform our business model, right? When you sort of look at traditional game models, or at least mobile game models with microtransactions, or sorry, even free to play, those are not necessarily set up. They're not necessarily setting young kids up for success. And so we're looking early on at a subscription business model, really to establish that early parent community and sort of evangelists to recognize the value for us to be able to help develop their understanding of the game and how to derive value out of it for their family. And then as kids get older, we've got some eyes on microtransactions and digital assets. I'll say, we are looking at Web3 as a sort of product channel to get into. And we think that really has the potential to unlock some interesting UGC, user generated content opportunities. But for us, there's a big, I'll call it, importance that we're placing on narrative and how narrative informs and models certain behavior. That's a real key to how we think about supporting growth and development in those areas I mentioned earlier. And that's something that we want to ultimately be able to control. So we are looking for a bit more of a curated experience, but also ways that we can engage parents and parent creators to contribute to the world. If you think about a parent developing an item or a reward for their child, maybe it takes them 6 months, maybe it takes them a year, maybe it takes them 3 weeks, right? But we think that that's a really interesting value proposition to be able to facilitate is that sort of parent-child creator relationship, and being able to have kids show off what their parent created for them, right? As opposed to perhaps being embarrassed by something their mom or dad made that they want to take to school. They want them to take to school or show off for their friends, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, right? You kind of put yourself in that child psychology.
So Kevin, where do you take this? Is this the kind of thing where you want to onboard 10,000 or as many as you can parents and children directly? Are you going to go to school boards and try and get that massive partnership with a school district? Is there like some type of integration or involvement with a Coco Melon or a ginormous kids brand that you're looking to partner with? I'm just curious how how you go about growing, fresh out the gate before even thinking about, oh, hey, our 5 to 10 year olds are aging up. Let's try and recapture them, like you mentioned, with including microtransactions or creating additional
Yeah.
products. But before you even get there, how are you getting, or how do you plan on attracting all of these users?
Yeah, I think we're really focused early on gaming families, right, and serving those parents and those kids with a fun social family, collaborative multiplayer game experience that doesn't have at its on its face anything to do with education or learning, but because we are developing this with an intentional pedagogical scaffolding, we do have a plan to kind of introduce our product and our experience to schools. Really trying to position teachers as the heroes they are, and giving them the sort of tools that you would see parents being able to engage one to one, but teachers being able to engage with their class, and be able to foster and facilitate adventures and challenges and puzzles that the kids together can work on, and really towards fostering those relationships and those early networking opportunities for kids. That's something that we see really being sort of disparate within the socioeconomic spectrum, right? Kids at the higher end develop a lot of early relationships and strong relationships. Kids in underserved communities don't necessarily have the strength of those relationships, throughout that keep with them throughout their lives and their careers. So yeah, schools are definitely an opportunity there, but I think there's a transmedia opportunity that we're looking at as well. We've really tried to architect our plans and sort of our go to market on a mass media opportunity, right? Our goal is really impact focused, in the sense of if we can get as many kids and parents collaborating, developing their relationships, engaging with one another, we end up having a generation with incredibly healthy brain architecture and sort of being set up for success. And so yeah, we're looking at a number of opportunities. On the partnership side, certainly, when we think about our subscription, we really look at it as a membership benefits community. And I think that's one of the things you're seeing a lot with Web3 and cryptocurrencies, is this sort of incentive caused bias, right? You get people to come in, invest, and sort of participate in the community, and then they sort of keeps them coming back more and more. And certainly recognizing how strong esports is for developing community and participation. We know that community and that sort of that activation that sort of go along with esports and game events are really going to be something that we're going to do long term.
So I have a similar question, I suppose, with a similar line of thinking, though a different application. Um, Mobile gaming, right? And you're going to focus on, I believe, Android and iOS, correct?
Yeah.
uh, so for our listeners, or those in our in our audience that are perhaps also in game development, I'm just curious, the learnings, the pitfalls, why you're choosing both, the hurdles and the resources that you're devoting to both, or that you're learning and overcoming. And again, kind of the same, I suppose the same line of thinking, but applied more towards the technical actual construction of the
Yeah.
product, and less so towards user acquisition.
Yeah.
I would just add also, why mobile only? I'm just out of curiosity.
Yeah, we're starting mobile. We're not planning on being mobile only. We have a cross-platform aspiration. We want to do a fast follow on desktop, and then depending on where the chips fall, we've got an eye towards the Switch as being sort of that third platform that we support.
Nice.
And really, that's sort of geared towards removing as many barriers to participation and play as possible, right? When we think about family households, there's a lot of hand-me-down phones that get passed down from parent to child, and from older sibling to younger sibling. And so, it's really important that we be able to not have any barriers to participation, as well be able to facilitate that sort of household cross-platform play, right? The kid might want to be playing on their mobile device. They might, the parent might be at their computer and they want to play there, or they're getting the notifications on their computer. And we think that have families are diverse in the sense of what they enjoy, where they enjoy it, and how they want to enjoy it. So for us to be able to facilitate that is really important, to remove those barriers and really encourage that active play that we want to see.
Kevin, can you talk about, the I love the intersection of gaming and education. Like I truly do. I think as someone who grew up with, Reader Rabbit and where in the world's Carmen San Diego, right? And like
Oregon Trail.
Yeah, old PC games that had a very strong educational bent, or I would argue you were really just educational games, right? Like it was education before game.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about that balance, right? For yourself, is it this has to be fun and entertaining and keep the kids coming back and playing before it has to deliver, some kind of learning, or is the delivering of the learning the most important part? And if it happens to be fun, that's obviously a great way to keep them coming back. But I'm curious where you put sort of the importance on one end of that spectrum or another, or somewhere in the middle.
That's another good one. So, before jumping into this, a couple years ago, I was reading some sort of edtech gaming book that sort of drew entertainment and learning or education on a spectrum, right? And there was this argument in this conversation that it either had to be one or the other. And the more that we've gotten acclimated and really thought through what we're developing, we see all those things as engaging, right? There's nothing really distinct or different from something that's fun, entertaining, or educational, right? There is in our consumer world and in our education sort of institutions, but at the end of the day, when you're engaged, you're entertained, you're open to new ideas, you're sort of learning new and interesting things. And so for us, we really boil it down to engagement, and that being sort of a singular focus. And that's in sort of contrast to us, seeing some of the statistics around what is it? I think by the time kids are 18, they'll have spent 50% more time being entertained than learning in school, right? So we do, skew what might be seen as being more entertaining, but it's really like if kids are not engaged in a way that they're motivated to kind of return to a product or spend time in that world that you're developing, they're not coming back, right? And that's one of the things that we looked at, in sort of as kids get into that 5, 6, 7-year-old range, especially within gaming families, they're being exposed to these AAA products that they're looking at their edtech product, and there's something that's being introduced to them through school, and there's no comparison, right? So like they're gonna go play Minecraft, Overwatch, etc., and be way more motivated to do that because that's what all their friends are doing than going and doing homework in this perhaps lower fidelity edtech experience. And I think that that's really a bit of a travesty, right? Like and one of our goals is how do we create something that has that impact of the leading edtech properties, and has the engagement of leading entertainment properties. So yeah, again, for us, it isn't about that spectrum. It's really like seeing them all as the same sort of tool. As how do we engage kids to learn, participate, grow, accept new ideas that are developmentally friendly and sound, and how do we involve the parents in that to really create that household that's bought into a gaming world and sort of community.
So I want to push there a little bit.
Yeah,
Are
please.
you saying that like the best educational games, won't teach you how to do algebra, right? That maybe the best ones are better at teaching softer skills or things where you don't, because it's hard to teach algebra through, a video game, at least in my mind. Like I can't think of a really clever way of turning, something that feels like Zelda into also learning how to do algebra. And so is the part of the realization, and what's clever here is that, we realize there's a set of skills that can be imparted and still be good as any AAA game, or I'm curious
Yes.
to push a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we recognize that not everything has to be explicit or repetitive, right? And that's really what we're getting into is this opportunity for both implicit and explicit learning moments that are sprinkled in throughout the narrative, throughout the gameplay, throughout the UX. And the other nuance there is that not all learning is academic, right? There's so much, and for us, really, the social, emotional, and cognitive aspects have more to do with how you understand your own emotions, and how you sort of understand the social environments that you're in, and how you solve problems, right? And none of those are inherently academic, right? So if you think about more of a natural growth parenting perspective, it's we without all these sort of institution and constructs will grow and learn and survive, right? That's kind of what we are as humans are built for. And so there's so many ways that we learn that our academic institutions don't embrace. They don't necessarily foster. And I think that that's one of the things that we're looking at as opportunity within the whole child development perspective, which is kind of separating out academics from all of the other skills and information and experiences that we need in order to be most successful. And that was really when we came into focus on social and emotional learning in the last handful of years. It was recognizing that kids who don't get exposed to any academic curriculum or teaching in the first I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years of life, and they're all sort of focused and fostered around developing socially, playing, communicating, teamwork, collaborating, that empathy. They have the opportunity to I think it's like 12 to 17% academic performance increases. There's like 40% reduction in bullying, or 40% reduction in physical aggression, 20% reduction in bullying. There's profound value in these non-academic subjects, and for us, like academics are not for everybody, right? There's the way that our standards-based school system operates in the U.S. at least is really challenging for some people, and sort of rightly so, right? Nobody wants to necessarily be sat in a classroom for 6, 7 hours a day, just kind of getting that rote memorization beat over, hitting you over the head every day. And I think that's what we really want to be able to facilitate is the learning outside of those academic subjects, because there's so much growth and development that most of us don't get until we're a professional, right? Like I went through so much development at Blizzard with their learning and development programs, for things that I very, very easily could have learned when I was a kid, and I did to some extent through sports, but was not at all a focus. And I think that that's really the opportunity that we're going after, is these non-academic developmental areas.
So along those lines, in not just including academics, of course, but what, and without naming names, also you can be as vague as you want here to protect identities. But what, I don't know, certified healthcare practitioners, persons of varying experiences and capabilities, what kind of partners are you looking for, or that you have already on board, on your board, or on involved with you in any capacity, that you're utilizing to either optimize growth from a business perspective, or just also to increase your own company's flexibility and reach in terms of what you're developing and how you seek to apply it?
Yeah, that's a good question too. We've got a handful of folks on our board that are really focused on developmental child development, research, kind of education design, social and emotional learning. We have one of the foremost experts on social and emotional gaming specifically on our team, and I think some of the academic partnerships we're exploring are really around like how can we partner with institutions that can help us deliver a better product, make a more sort of effective, learning product, if you will, and kind of keep us honest, right? I think that's one of the challenges that we've kind of put on ourselves is we want to be independently verified, that what we're developing has true impact, that it's not sort of being, we don't have our internal bias kind of going into the design of the research and how we kind of validate the efficacy of the product. And so, yeah, that's part of the partnerships we're exploring. We're exploring partnerships with traditional ed tech companies that have learning management systems and various objectives within schools, and have sort of large student bodies that we can go and support and sort of develop partnerships around developing the product and the product for classes, for school administrators, and how we can sort of foster that more broadly across not just the US but globally as well.
Kevin, can you talk about the target market for the business here? How big you think this can be, and maybe where I'm most curious is, given your background at Riot, at Activision Blizzard, right? Like all these huge publishers, developers, is there a world you think 2 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever, where one of these very big game developers, one of these very big publishers puts out something competitive, right? A game that also has a big educational bent. Like, do you see the big AAA developers getting into this space over the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever?
That's a tough one. We see the total addressable market as being very substantial, right? If you think about the pure demographics of the total population of the planet, there's around 2.25 billion kids, which means there's around 4-ish billion parents. There's a massive market for this, and then you see the trends in gaming adoption, kind of leading with millennials and going into Gen Z. Gaming families are going to be everywhere, and so if they're not, I definitely see that happening. But it's a really difficult space, right? We've seen with Minecraft that they've gone into having an education product. We saw a huge announcement from Roblox recently with I don't know how much that they were putting towards developing out their education suite. And we've certainly seen a handful of other products that are more on the play or sort of toy side of child development, getting some pretty big announcements. But a lot of the AAA industry doesn't necessarily know how to handle education, right? They don't know how to take that step into the education forefront, and I think it's really challenging, right? If you think about it just from a school perspective, a lot of VCs in the ed tech space don't necessarily like ed tech because it's really difficult to do business with schools. They have really long sales cycles, and so I think on the consumer learning angle, like that's certainly what we're going after first. I would certainly hope to see, and hopefully my being on this podcast and kind of putting this project into the world helps motivate some of that traction. But I think a lot of these game companies are very happy, sticking with the core demographics of 18 to 35-year-olds, and I think there's still a lot to happen, or that needs to happen in that space to serve that audience more fully. But it's hard to say. I would love to see it. I would love to see more AAA studios getting into thinking about ed tech. You're seeing a little bit with Ubisoft, I suppose, with Assassin's Creed, right? They've been able to use Assassin's Creed as sort of historical, education and value. They've developed, certain sort of side missions or quests specifically for, academic institutions. But broadly, it's challenging, right? I mean, even just getting out a game like Halo or Cyberpunk has its massive challenges that a lot of folks still can't get, exactly how they want to deliver those products.
You mentioned Roblox, and I want to hit on that one for a second. Like, I'm assuming you see them as maybe the most direct competitor, given sort of what they say they might do in the education space. Although the announcement felt bigger than anything we've seen so far that's tangible. The interesting thing with Roblox for me is everyone believes this is a platform for kids, right? Like everyone assumes it's little kids mostly on the platform. And then when you sort of start digging into their demographic data and their public filings, you realize that there's actually a sizable portion of the Roblox user base that's in their 20s, some even in their 30s. And I'm curious if, you fast forward a couple of years here, do you see a similar phenomenon with your own platform where it's not just kids and parents, but where, you have this phenomenon of people age up with the platform and stay on it, and it attracts an audience that's not just kids, or will you guys really artificially limit it or forcefully limit it to, a certain age range and their parents?
Yeah, Roblox has been a hard company to really evaluate. They've gone. I mean, they are a UGC platform, right? It's all about people developing content and having other people experience. And for us, we're looking for something more curated and sort of narrative driven, right? And I think there's a bit of a distinction there for us. We're also we're doing a sort of midterm UGC play as opposed to leading with that being the main attraction. It's I'm very critical of Roblox for a number of reasons, and I'll sort of hold those. I think that challenge that you're talking about with that social environment is really, is that kind of social environment safe for kids in mass, sort of in an unmoderated way. And I think you've seen a handful of well, you may not have seen them, but there's been a handful of critical news articles and journalists kind of investigating what's happening with Roblox, and it's really challenging to be able to develop a social environment for kids. I think they're doing as good a job as they can, but I think more needs to be done to create a safe online environment that kids and families can participate in. And so I think we're more on the artificial sort of capping that and really trying to think about how you foster and grow a family friendly sort of safe social environment. And to do that, it needs to be curated. It needs to be limited. You need to have parents really having a sort of handle, especially in those early child ages, on who your kids are connecting with and how those relationships can be sort of carried out in an online space. I think that's really coming into focus with all the sort of social media critiques around the impact on especially young girls who we've seen sort of an uptick in suicide rates and mental health and anxiety and depression. And when you get into those last three, that's sort of more broadly with Gen Z as a whole. We're seeing a lot of real sort of life impacts as a result of some of these technologies we've been developing. And we have to get better. We have to really sort of ask the tough questions, look at our theories of change, and sort of mitigate the negative blowback that we're seeing sort of in mass. So yeah, I don't know. That's sort of a long-winded perspective on it, but it's an uncertain future. But those are the sort of ways in which we're sort of orienting ourselves to tackle those problems.
Kevin, your answer made me think of something else here too, because maybe it was unfair my comparison to Roblox, more so just in the target demographic, I guess. But one trend in the game space that we've seen over the last 6 months, 12 months is a ton of consolidation on the game developer side, right? Like Tencent's buying up game developers. There's a ton of consolidation that's happening. Game developers being bought up left, right, and center. Like who is the most natural? I'm not saying. I'm not asking what you would like or what, but who's the most natural sort of acquirer or partner for something like this? Like who would be the partner that would help take this to the next level in this environment of game developer consolidation?
Yeah, I think Nintendo for us is really where we go to. Mentally, they're doing so much right. And it's certainly Animal Crossing has been on our radar. Kind of led with Zelda. We think as far as family friendly entertainment, they're certainly where we want to be in terms of quality and fidelity. And we think there's a really natural sort of fit for what we're doing with the brand and the product that they're already putting out. And I think as you're talking about the consolidation, right, of development and content, there was a conversation we had with an investor maybe late last year that talked about that, right? You're seeing so much content come into the space. How do you curate that? How do you sort of set yourself apart? And that's one of the areas that we think we can have a really great sort of go to market and sort of footprint is being very distinct, differentiated content for kids that really addresses the concerns of parents and kind of meets them in the middle.
It's interesting you said Nintendo. I almost feel like they don't get enough credit, or at least not enough of the airtime these days, right? Like it's a lot of Roblox and Fortnite,
Yep.
and when we talk about sort of this younger demographic, and it seems even though everyone knows Nintendo is very family friendly, it just feels like they don't necessarily get all the credit they deserve in terms of what they've accomplished in that segment. Jimmy, sorry,
I agree. I agree. You guys know on the show and on the live show, I've been actually hypercritical of Nintendo on a number of stories. And when Kevin mentioned them, I immediately was just like, oh yeah, that's perfect actually. Because it's about fit, right? And it's about audience. And I've become less of the Nintendo audience because I'm in between that in between, both of your consumers, the parent and the child, because I'm just it's where I am in my life. But yeah, I thought that was spot on.
And I'm critical of Nintendo as well, right? As a fan, I have really high expectations, and I think Nintendo holds themselves back in a lot of ways, right? It
Yeah.
almost feels like, with I don't know how long it took to get the next Pokemon game, or like some of the products that they put out are just like, they feel like they could be so much more, and there's so much power and nostalgia and legacy with everything Nintendo. But they're starting to get those wheels turning, right? And I think, for a lot of developers, with the successes of Riot and Blizzard and some of these brands that have been around for multiple decades, right? We're starting to think more about multi-generational engagement, right? How do
Hmm.
you create an entertainment property that can last 30 years, as opposed to where we came from, which was that box product, right? There's the story with WoW that that was the first service product they put out, and like they crunched like hell to get the product out, and then it was like, oh wait, we gotta keep crunching to service this product. Wait, what?
Little did they know,
Little
15
did they
years
know.
later.
They hit their year one subscription goals in, like, I don't know, it was like 2 weeks or a month, and I think there's been a lot of those types of products over the last 5 years, especially, that have come out of nowhere. They've sort of taken the entirety of our culture's attention. And how do you hold on to that, right? How do you foster that? How do you grow that? How do you build that community? And you know it's easy to point to Riot to say, like, they're doing it really well, right? They're fostering that in person, sort of real relationships. And I think
Hmm.
that's ultimately what game companies need to do, is especially in the face of a lot of the Web3 gaming and a lot of the incentive caused bias that's happening there, with people promoting the investments that they have, and the games that are being developed on those chains, right? Like, there's something about being able to reach out and touch somebody physically that just it doesn't ever really get replaced within the game world.
Kevin, I have two last questions here before I unleash Judge Jimmy's cross examination on you here. Everyone's new favorite segment, and that is, so the first question is, I mentioned sort of the games I grew up with, right? The Reader Rabbits, the Where in the World's Carmen Sandiego, right? These games, these educational games that, for me at least, were very formative, like had a huge impact on my childhood. Um, where does this all end? Like, what is the end game for the intersection of gaming and education in your mind? Like, is there an end game that you see?
It's something I've dreamed about, so to speak. I think that end game is a seamless experience, right? That allows you to kind of pick and choose, what kind of experience and what kind of skills and what kind of kind of life you want to be able to foster and have facilitated through digital media, right? We already sort of do it with Netflix. There's a lot of sort of self-soothing that happens with Netflix and chill, right? And I think with games, the way that they're developing, you're seeing a lot of interesting AI content generation plays happening and getting funded right now. You're seeing all sorts of metaverse, and I think you don't really fully realize the vision of a metaverse unless you have educational and developmental opportunities sort of contained within. And games are, every fatui is a learning experience, right? Already to help you learn that game. And so we think that there's a really interesting possibility at a seamless sort of choose your own adventure type of gaming lifestyle that has the potential to sort of last with you in a throughout the decades, right? So yeah, that's I think ultimately where I see it going.
I love it. Human beings learn by playing. We do from literally birth. To me, this is the most natural intersection between two things. And I've said many times, I think education is one of those industries that essentially gaming swallows at some point.
Yeah.
So love what you guys are doing, Kevin.
Thanks.
Last question, then I'm going to hand you over to Jimmy, and that is,
Um,
what is the one game you want to see Activision Blizzard make here?
no.
What is the one your wish list? You haven't been there for a while now, right? So
Yeah. That's a really good question. I'd love to see a return to the Warcraft 3, Hero RTS, and I guess I'll stop there. That's the kind of game. I don't know if it has to be Warcraft. I'd love to see Blizzard do another original IP. I think they knocked it out of the park with Overwatch, and I think I don't know. I love new worlds, new experiences, but also that familiar gameplay. And I'm kind of sad that we didn't see some of that gameplay represented in StarCraft, but StarCraft 2 rather. So yeah, that would be awesome to see a new IP with a new take on that.
Cool. Well, I'm going to hand it over, Jimmy. So for those who maybe missed last week's episode, we're doing this every single week, guys. It's a new segment. We're calling it Judge Jimmy's Cross-Examination. And so what Jimmy's going to do, he's going to ask Kevin five or six questions, right, Jimmy, that are not gaming and esports related, that we want to delve into the personalities of our guests and who they are. So Honorable Judge Jimmy, take it away.
Thanks, Paul, and no pressure, Kevin. Just the entire show and interview hinges on this moment, so we'll do our best to get these answers. So first, what book would you recommend to anyone listening that left an impact on you?
Well, I would say The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. That book in particular, I would say, is what set me down this path, and kind of really got me into positive psychology and well-being science. And I'm actively reading the follow-up. I know it's not really follow-up to that book, but he and a co-author, Greg Lukianoff, I believe, recently wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, which really puts into perspective a lot of the challenges that we're sort of seeing play out on a national stage. So, Jonathan Haidt, in particular with Happiness Hypothesis, was an incredible book, very inspirational.
Next question. The Witcher 2 comes out, season 2 this week. You're watching that? Not watching that?
Watching it.
Definitely. Nice.
Binging it. Might be an all-nighter.
Love it.
My wife loves it too.
It's family friendly. I think it's a great crossover.
Friendly.
If you could go back to school, what class would you take or major would you pursue?
That's a good one. I've thought about this a lot in the past. I think right now philosophy is where my head's been at. Being able to represent my thoughts and think more critically about the world. Having spent a decade in sort of QA and product quality, it's something I often think about and try to break down. So philosophy is definitely where my head's at.
I wish our audience, at least to those of them watching or to those of them listening, should definitely watch this episode, because I just love watching you think about that answer and how to come to it. It's good. It's entertaining. All right, two more. Do you want two easy ones or an easy one and a slightly more, not challenging, but one that makes you think?
Let's go with the thinkers.
I knew you'd answer that way. All right, I'll give you one easy one and one thinker. The easy one, what's your favorite fast food or cuisine?
Ooh. Not easy. Sushi is broadly my favorite cuisine. Fast food, Dairy Queen Reese's Blizzard is has a special place in my heart. Doesn't happen often, but on a rare night, my wife will look at me and we'll be like, "Okay, I'll be right back."
It's a DQ night. Love it. All right, and for what you asked for, what keeps you up at night? What are the things that kind of stress you out, business-wise mostly? But if you want to take it personal, I guess we could go there.
They're so tightly coupled. I think starting a company and trying to solve problems for the world are very, very closely intertwined. There's not a minute of the day that I'm not focused on something related to make an impact on the world and trying to right some of the things that have gone wrong. I think there's especially in American society, there's a lot of controversy, and it feels different today than it did we'll say yesterday, right? And I think making connections and kind of developing relationships and trying to figure out, how you move the most important goals and priorities of the world forward in positive ways is keeps me up a lot.
Kevin, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this podcast. Thank you so much for being on. If you want to be found or followed or Evolve Play, like where can people follow what you're up to, what you're doing, what the business is doing?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kevin Caldwell, and then anything at Evolved Play, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, I think we all have, and then our website, evolvedplay.com.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada, thank you, as always. And thank all of you for listening. Guys, just a couple of reminders. Every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we do a live stream. It's all the goodness you get from the podcast and and love from the podcast. It's all the news that we don't talk about on the podcast, the last week of news. And the best part is we get to do it live with you guys. You get to ask us questions, get in our faces. It really is a lot of fun. That's Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, every single Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on all of our channels, basically. So on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, you can watch the live stream, catch the live stream on any of those channels. Also, we launched 2 new podcasts a couple weeks ago now, Meta Woman and Meta Business. Meta Woman is all about empowering and supporting the female community that works in and around the metaverse. It's hosted by our very own Lindsay Poss. So if you know and love her on the live stream, definitely go check that out. It's a lot of fun. She has amazing guests every single week. It's called Meta Woman. You can subscribe to it anywhere you get your podcast. And Meta Business is a new show that I'm doing with the Juice himself, Jeff the Juice Cohen, every single week, where we talk about big metaverse news. So big Web3 and metaverse news, the intersection of gaming and crypto, some of those big themes. So he and I dissect those news stories every single week. Meta Business, everywhere you get your podcasts. Kevin, Jimmy, thank you guys. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to follow us on all socials, Biz Esports everywhere, and we will see you guys next week.